Japan's history books erased them. Their language was banned. Their identity was erased. And for over a century, the Ainu were written off as a people that no longer existed. But then, something changed. Scientists uncovered something in their DNA, something that proved the Ainu never truly disappeared. And when Japan was forced to admit the truth, it changed everything. In 2008, the Japanese government officially recognized over 200,000 Ainu people living in the Hokkaido region of Japan. This was not an uncertain or out-of-the-blue decision, as Japan had evicted them before. But DNA evidence helped spot their unique heritage. The story begins between the giant, beautiful mountains and valleys of Hokkaido. According to scientists, along the coastlines of the Ishikari and Chitose rivers, they believed to be living descendants of the Jomon people, well known as ancient hunters and gatherers. Shockingly, these descendants were none other than the Ainu. The term indigenous means to be native, but the Ainu are distinct from the ethnic Yamato group. They are not just a group of people, they are survivors. Initially, scientists thought they were similar to the native Yamato group, but what comes next was unsettling. For thousands of years, they have lived in the northern regions of Japan, but genetic evidence tells a different story. They are closely linked to Asian Siberians across Northeast Asia. In addition to genetic links, researchers were thrilled to discover archaeological and cultural connections. But what made them settle in Japan? The Ainu weren't always here. Their journey began thousands of miles away, in the frozen landscapes of Siberia. But here's what's strange. When scientists traced their DNA, they found something shocking. The Ainu didn't just migrate. They carried a genetic fingerprint unlike any other group in Japan. Their origins are not limited to one island. They also inhabited the Kuril and Sakhalin Islands, which are now part of Russia. Their settlements were also found in northern Honshu. The majority of their population, however, belongs to Hokkaido Island in present-day Japan. In a land ruled by honor and steel, there was one enemy the samurai didn't need swords to defeat. The Ainu weren't warriors. They weren't even considered equals. To Japan's rulers, they were a problem that needed to be erased. At first, they were forced into unfair trade deals. But then, something worse happened. The Ainu fought back. They rose up in a desperate attempt to reclaim their homeland. The Shakushan Revolt of 1669 should have changed everything. Instead, it became their downfall. By the early 19th century, the Japanese Empire had spread across the coastlines of sacred islands, rivers, and mountains. Controversial laws were enacted against the Ainu people. They were forbidden from speaking their own language, forced to adopt Japanese names, and restricted from performing rituals. These efforts aimed to erase their identity as an isolated community and force them to blend into Japanese culture. The Ainu, once rulers of the North, had become ghosts in their own homeland. For decades, Japan denied their existence, claiming that the Ainu had been fully assimilated, but the Ainu were never truly gone. In 2008, after years of activism, the Japanese government finally recognized the Ainu as an indigenous people, admitting the truth that had been buried for centuries. Today, the Ainu are reclaiming their identity. Language revival efforts, cultural festivals, and historical recognition are breathing life back into their heritage. In places like Upapoi National Ainu Museum and Park, the voices of the Ainu are rising once more, telling the world, "We are still here." But the question arises, after centuries of denying the isolated identity of the Ainu, how did we come to recognize their existence today? With multiple factors involved, evidently, their distinct genetics along with unique physical features and traditions, anthropologists and researchers were able to confirm their distinction from the Yamato people. These discoveries and findings put forward a new set of results, to which we weren't prepared. For decades, Japan insisted the Ainu had simply merged into the rest of the country, that they were just a forgotten part of history. But when scientists finally studied their DNA, what they found told a completely different story. The Ainu weren't like the Japanese. They weren't even like the other indigenous groups of Asia. Their genes carried a unique signature, one that linked them to a distant, mysterious past. According to the genetic data, about 25 different types of mtDNA were discovered, 11 of which were uniquely related to the Ainu, while the remaining 14 matched other Asian groups. Amusingly, 87.5% of Ainu men had YAP+ lineages, also called Y haplogroups, which are found only in Japan. Unlike mainland Japanese and Okinawans, the Ainu did not have certain Y haplogroups. The rest of the Ainu men carried Y haplogroups common in North Asia, including Sakhalin. This unique presence of 11 MITI DNA types exclusive to the Ainu group strongly supports their isolated integrity, while the presence of Y haplogroups suggests some degree of intermingling with other groups. Their genetic makeup is reflected not only in their genes but also in their physical features. They have broader and deeper set eyes, sometimes with double eyelids, while Yamato Japanese tend to have narrower, almond-shaped eyes with single eyelids. Their faces are generally wider with higher cheekbones, whereas Yamato Japanese typically have more oval-shaped faces. Their noses are often straight or slightly hooked, whereas Yamato Japanese noses are usually flatter and smaller. Their hair is thick, wavy, and curly, which is uncommon among Yamato Japanese, who typically have straight hair. Ainu men tend to have thick beards and more facial hair. Moreover, they were historically taller and more robust compared to the more slender Yamato Japanese. However, modern diets and mixed genetics have resulted in an average height similar to the Yamato people. But DNA wasn't the only thing that made the Ainu unique. There was something else, something even more mysterious, a language unlike any other in Japan, one that almost disappeared forever. Ainu Itak is an isolated language unrelated to Japanese, Korean, or Chinese. It was traditionally unwritten and relied solely on oral storytelling. Many words and phrases in their folklore reflect the Ainu's deep connection to nature and spirituality. However, due to the lack of a standardized writing system, Ainu Itak was never fully documented, leading to its endangerment. During the Meiji era, 1868 to 1912, Japan sought to unify its culture and language, forcing the Ainu to adopt Japanese. Speaking Ainu was discouraged or outright banned in schools and public life. Ainu people were pressured to assimilate, leading to generations growing up speaking only Japanese. The last known native Ainu speakers passed away in the 20th century. Most Ainu today speak Japanese as their first language and may only know a few Ainu words or phrases. Despite this, efforts are being made to preserve and revitalize their language. Ainu Itak classes are now available in some schools, universities, and community centers, especially in Hokkaido. The Foundation for Ainu Culture, FSE, runs language courses for both Ainu descendants and the general public. The most alluring aspect of Ainu Itak is that it's not just their way of communication, it holds the core essence of their spiritual beliefs and religion. Looking into their phrases and words is like reflecting on their gods and deities. As DNA changed the perspective of the worldview of this indigenous group, one cannot ignore the uniqueness that holds their spiritual concepts. One more shocking revelation to researchers is that their beliefs didn't just revolve around the ancient Japanese beliefs of Shinto or Buddhism. In fact, they have a rich tradition deeply rooted in animism, meaning they believe that everything in nature has a spirit, kamui. Their beliefs are centered around respecting and coexisting with nature, as they see themselves as part of a world filled with spiritual beings. What's amazing to know is their deities of kamui. Kamui are spirits or deities that exist in all things, including animals, natural elements, tools, and household objects. The Ainu worship and deeply respect these kamui. Some of their deities include Kim-un Kamui, the god of bears and mountains, Kamui Huchi, the goddess of fire and the hearth, considered the guardian of the home, Repun Kamui, the god of the sea and fishing, worshipped by coastal Ainu, Chisei Koro Kamui, the protector of homes and families. But Kamui isn't the only thing that will amaze you. They believe that the Kamui provide them with food, shelter, and guidance. In return, humans must show respect and gratitude through rituals. One of the most important Ainu rituals is Iyomante, or the bear sending ceremony. The Ainu believe that bears are sacred messengers of the gods. A bear cub is raised with care and, after a few years, is ritually sacrificed. The bear's spirit is believed to return to the world of the Kamui, bringing blessings to the people. The ceremony includes songs, dances, prayers, and offerings of food, with the help of wooden prayer sticks. The fact that has amazed researchers the most is that the Ainu didn't just believe in animal spirits and deities. In fact, they also worshipped the very tools that made life possible on this planet. Fire also considered a sacred tool in Ainu religion, and is represented by the fire goddess Kamui Huchi. Every home had a fireplace or hearth, which was considered the connection between humans and the spiritual world. Before eating, hunting, or traveling, Ainu people would offer prayers and sake to the fire to ask for protection. Since the Ainu had no written language, their religious beliefs were passed down through oral traditions. Yukar epic poems and songs about gods, heroes, and spirits woodpecker folk tales that teach moral lessons and spiritual wisdom. These oral traditions kept Ainu spirituality alive for generations. Ironically, like many cultures, Ainu women traditionally had tattoos around their mouths, hands, and arms. These tattoos were believed to protect them from evil spirits and ensure a safe passage to the afterlife. This practice was banned by the Japanese government in the 19th century, but remains an important part of Ainu spiritual heritage to this day. If you want to look deeper into their beliefs, look at their artistic expressions. Their art never came from imagination alone, but carried deep spiritual meaning and a higher purpose. The Ainu believed that evil spirits, when kamui, could bring misfortune, illness, and bad luck. To ward off these spirits, they embroidered geometric patterns on their clothing, especially around the sleeves, collars, and hems. These bold, swirling designs acted as spiritual barriers, keeping negative forces away. Salmon, shipe, was seen as a gift from the water deity Inau Uk Kamui, and the first salmon of the season was always ceremonially honored. Ohau, Ainu stew, was often prepared using game like deer and bear, but the Ainu believed that these animals were actually gods in disguise. After hunting, they performed rituals to send the animal's spirit back to the gods in gratitude. In all, ritual prayer sticks were carefully carved and placed at sacred sites to communicate with the spirits and ask for blessings. Each carving had a unique pattern that carried a spiritual meaning. Napopo dolls, small wooden figurines, were considered protective charms that could carry spiritual energy and watch over the people. But the awe of this beautiful culture didn't end in just art. Ainu people have rich traditional life, which is simple yet fascinating in its own way. The way they live their life, marriage traditions or burial rituals, is another sense of their integrity and values. Marriage is not just the union of two people. This is a union of two souls. As every culture have its own unique ways to celebrate this union, the Ainu ways of customizing their marriages are unique in its own way. Ainu people had unique marriage customs rooted in their animist beliefs and social structures. Their traditional marriage practices reflected their values on kinship, gender roles, and community. Most marriages are arranged by families, sometimes from an early age. Parents or elders played a significant role in matchmaking. However, mutual consent was also considered, and there were cases where a couple could marry for love. Ainu women typically married between 15 to 18 years old, while men married slightly later, usually around 17 to 20 years old. The age difference ensured the man could hunt, fish, and provide for the family. A formal marriage proposal often involved gift exchanges. The groom's family would present valuable items like embroidered clothing, swords, or lacquerware to the bride's family. If the bride's family accepted, the marriage was approved. Ainu women traditionally tattooed their hands, arms, and lips as they matured. A fully tattooed woman was considered ready for marriage. The tattoos were believed to protect them from evil spirits and show their marital eligibility. Ainu weddings were relatively simple, often involving a communal feast. The couple would drink sacred millet or sake as a ritual bonding act. The groom would move into the bride's family home, matrilocal tradition, at least temporarily, before they established their own home. Ainu women were skilled in weaving, embroidery, and food preparation, and these skills were highly valued in marriage. They played key roles in spiritual ceremonies and raising children. Polygamy was not common, but was sometimes practiced, especially by leaders or hunters with high status. Divorce was possible, usually if one partner was infertile, if the husband failed to provide, or if there was incompatibility. The Ainu had a matrilineal influence, meaning the wife had a strong role in household decisions. The couple would engage in subsistence activities like fishing, hunting, and gathering, working together for survival. Though many Ainu customs changed over time due to Japanese influence, some traditions still persist within Ainu cultural revival movements today. Even though marriages were simple yet beautiful, but with the celebrating union of souls, there is also a celebration for a newcomer in the family. As in every culture, birth of a child is celebrated with great spiritual integrity. Ainu, in this case also, spread wonders. Their birth customs reflect their understanding of spirits, kamui, and the importance of lineage. Pregnancy was seen as a blessing from the spirits, and expecting mothers were given special care. Women followed dietary restrictions and performed purification rituals to ensure a safe birth. The community would prepare essential items, including clothing embroidered with protective symbols. Childbirth usually took place in the home, assisted by experienced elder women. To ward off evil spirits, when kamui, certain charms or sacred objects were placed near the mother. The placenta was often buried in a meaningful place, sometimes near trees or rivers, to connect the child to nature. A newborn was not given a name immediately. Instead, they were initially addressed with temporary or humble names to avoid drawing the attention of malevolent spirits. After some time, weeks or months, an elder or shaman performed a naming ceremony, giving the child a proper Ainu name, often inspired by nature. The name was believed to protect the child and shape their fate. The baby was given protective amulets or charms made of wood or cloth, believed to ward off evil spirits. Special embroidered clothing, often made by the mother or grandmother, was placed on the baby to invoke blessings from ancestors and spirits. The birth was celebrated with a small feast involving close family and sometimes the community. Traditional foods such as fish, millet cakes, and sake were offered to the kamui as gratitude for a safe delivery. Elders would bless the child, sometimes rubbing sacred ash or performing purification rituals. Ainu elders also passed down traditional wisdom, telling the child's parents about their role in raising a strong and spiritually connected individual. These traditions reinforced the Ainu belief that every child was a gift from the spirits and that their life was intertwined with nature and the community. While modern Ainu may not practice all these customs today, some aspects of spiritual naming and blessings still persist within cultural revival efforts. As with moments of joy or the moments of sorrow, loss or death is unfortunate, but fate of every human in this life. As many cultures arranged funerals and rituals differently, so did the Ainu. Just like the marriage and birth-death were also deeply rooted with their animist beliefs and their understanding of the spirit world, Kamui Moshir, the land of spirits. They believed that death was not the end, but a transition to another existence, and their funerary customs reflected their deep respect for ancestors and nature. When a person passed away, their body was washed and dressed in their finest clothing, often embroidered with protective symbols. A wooden grave marker, imikot or imikop, sometimes inscribed with the deceased's name, was prepared. Personal belongings such as tools, weapons, or jewelry were placed beside them for use in the afterlife. The Ainu practiced earth burials, placing the deceased in a grave, usually in a north-south direction to align with spiritual beliefs. The grave was often shallow, covered with earth and leaves, and surrounded by wooden fences or markers to protect the spirit from wandering. In some regions, small burial mounds were created, marking the gravesite. Family and community members gathered to mourn the deceased, offering prayers and sake to guide their spirits safely to the afterlife. Women, especially close family members, would cut their hair as a sign of deep mourning. A fire purification ritual was performed to cleanse the area and protect the living from wandering spirits. The Ainu believed that spirits, Ramat, could return and cause misfortune if not properly sent off. To prevent this, they avoided calling the deceased by name after death. Sometimes, items belonging to the deceased were burned to symbolically send them to the other world. In some cases, burial locations were kept secret to prevent malevolent spirits from disturbing the dead. Infants and young children who died early were sometimes buried near homes instead of cemeteries. Those who died violently, e.g., accidents or conflicts, were given special purification rites to ensure their spirit could rest. The Ainu believed in a spiritual afterlife, where the deceased would continue their existence among the kamui, spirits. Offerings were sometimes left at grave sites to honor ancestors. Some ceremonies like Iomante, bear-sending ritual, also honored deceased family members by sending spirits to the other world. While modernization and Japanese influence changed many aspects of Ainu burial customs, some of these traditions are still remembered and honored within the Ainu cultural revival movement today. Over years of repression and suffering in the shadows of their dark past, the Ainu endured. Despite everything, they preserved their identity. They made the impossible possible. Today, we would not be speaking of them if not for their efforts, resilience, and sacrifices. Their story is a powerful influence on the modern world. With modernization, are we losing our identity? Are we still aligned with the roots of our ancestors? Their story isn't just a tale of survival, it's a tale of caution.
They were no less than the samurai or ancient warriors, but their battles were fought not with swords, but against the erasure of their existence.